religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jah, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Every Thursday, we have time to talk tough on some of the present issues in our country and our diaspora community. With me tonight to discuss issues pertinent to our country, I have Mr. Thomas B. Cannon, who is joining us from North Carolina, I think. Mr.
Yes.
Cannon, welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. Good to be here again today.
Good. Let me welcome Dr. Abdullah Douglas joining us from the nation's capital. Dr. Duke, welcome to Focus on Liberia Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let me also welcome Mr. Calebo Gonglo from New Jersey, from Philadelphia. Mr. Gonglo is the Mav Genius. Welcome, Mr. Gonglo.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm not a Mav Genius. I'm the founder of the African Mav Genius Project.
Right. Founder of the African Mav Genius Project. I mean, genius can found genius. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. We are going to be talking about some very important issues. President Weah was away for some time from the country, and details surrounding the trips were not made available to people. Who did he meet? What all transpired? We didn't know until he got back to the country. But at that time, certain things happened, and so we want to talk about those things. For instance, the U.S. ambassador to Liberia was replaced. We also saw that while in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, we heard about $15 billion contract. We're going to discuss all that because anytime the president comes home, they ask him, Papa Nakan, what did you bring? So we're going to explore that. Also, the former Vice President Joseph Numa Boakai, we are still waiting for his vice presidential pick. And there are some names out there that have been thrown around, including Senator Jeremiah Cohn, Mr. Henry Costa, Senator Yombli Kanga, and others are saying Mr. Samuel Kofi Woods. Which of these, in your view, will make a better running mate for the former vice president? Also, as voter registration continues, we are hearing news about voter trucking. What is it? What's responsible, and how can we fix this kind of issue? Those are the issues we're going to be discussing tonight. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. If you have not already invited a friend, please do so and join the discussion. Well, the last time we were here and we spoke about the president's trip, it was said that he came to meet the CIA. We don't know details of that trip, what was discussed in that meeting. According to his press secretary, he was supposed to even take part in the water summit. We don't know if that happened. And normally we see pictures when the president traveled. This time it didn't happen. So a lot of rumors were going around. There were a lot of speculations. In the midst of it all, the ambassador McCarthy was talking tough. And right after the president came, he's being replaced. What's going on here? Dr. Duke, the replacement of the ambassador, really, what does it say about the trip? Because there were other kind of speculations surrounding it. Did the president have anything to do with it? What really do we think that prompted that change? And how is it being received in our Liberian quarters? What's your take?
No, I didn't get it. Your question is if the recall of the ambassador?
Yeah, what does it have to do
with the U.S. ambassadors are usually spending 2 years wherever they go. And unless there's a circumstance where the country is through a crisis or something else, usually after 2 years you go home and then somebody else comes in. So it's not strange. This was like in the plan. And plus he was appointed by Trump. There's been a new administration that kept him in posts, but his 2 years are over, so he goes home. I mean, I don't think there's any connection. I don't think the governor of Liberia at this stage has the capacity to accept the recall of an ambassador.
And we in that pronouncement, in that nomination, we did not see that he was given a new post. Is that also normal?
Well, if you follow, I mean, Linda Greenfield came back and she didn't have a post. She was at the ministry, at the State Department. And after her, somebody who came, Don Blaney, was also, and before her, he was also sent there. I mean, they work at the State Department. These are most of these guys are what you call civil servants. They're not like politicians that you pick and say, okay, I won the elections, I'm going to send you to a post. A lot of people who go to Liberia are, civil servants. So they go to Liberia, serve 2 years, and come back. If you look at his resume, he's more a press person, a communication person in embassies rather than a politician. So he's not the new guys coming in. So McDonald will go back. I mean, McCarthy will go back and then be at the State Department. They might send him to China. They might send him to, to work in a different department of the State Department. That's a big, big, big thing. But I don't think that that really matters. I mean, they come, serve 2 years. I think the presidential leave had asked that Ambassador Greenfield stay a year or two, and because Hillary was, she had that connection at the White House, she was able to stay. But usually, you do your 2 years. If there's no circumstances that force you to stay, they will call you back home and then send somebody else. They don't want to get too comfortable.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. What are you reading into this? On both sides, there are people in the opposition. There are even people in the diaspora who say they were the one who called for the removal of Ambassador McCarthy, that because of what he said. And then on the other hand, he said, "Oh, this ambassador has been replaced by someone who has more military training and connection. So this may be because the CIA called the president for some security concern." So there are a lot of people that are reading into this. What are you reading?
Well, I mean, everything that happens in Liberia today has different interpretations. But like Doug said, Ambassador McCarthy actually arrived in Liberia in January 2021. So he stayed the whole of 2021. He has stayed the whole of 2022. Therefore, he actually completed the 2-year term limit. And of course, like Doug said, he was appointed by the previous administration. Going back to his administration, to his appointment, in fact, I think there was some kind of issue back in Liberia because by the time he got appointed, there was a transition in Washington before he could actually arrive in Liberia because it took some time for him to get confirmed. So there was this concern as to whether the new administration actually sanctioned his going to Liberia. And I think the embassy put out an information that clarified that he is the ambassador posted to Liberia and therefore he continued. So to me, everyone can read into it. I've been looking at social media. There are a lot of things that other people are saying. And also with the coincidence that the president just left from here when it was released. But he was now the only person, the new ambassador posted to Liberia is not the only person that was appointed, though. It's a list of other people that were appointed. So I don't think the American government is going to work by the schedule of the Liberian government to say the president is going to come before the appointment actually takes place. And considering that he actually completed his 2-year time that ambassadors normally complete, I would just say that this is a decision that the U.S. government made, and they've appointed a new ambassador who has a history of serving in Liberia as a Peace Corps. So we are just going to wait to see whether he goes through his confirmation, and we look forward to welcoming him.
Mr. Gonglo, other people on the pro Weah side are saying, you see, United States have resolved to work with President Weah, and that's why they are even giving him a new ambassador based upon his request. These are all things that we hear. What do you make of this ambassador replacement?
Well, I think if you look at the background of the new ambassador, I would even say the Weah people should be a little bit worried that this guy has served on security matter, in crisis area. Are they expecting that Liberia might have security issues, might have potential crisis issue? Is that why they bring in? So one could look at it in number of ways, but I don't think we can read more into it other than what it is. I think it's just a normal routine that they're changing the guys within the State Department. I want to just say, I want to believe it's a normal routine because the meeting president we are had in Washington, there is not much information on that. We don't know what, there's so much secrecy about it. Some people have said all sorts of things. On their show a few weeks ago when I appeared, my thinking was that I think the Americans are trying to get their foothold in Africa, in Saharan Africa, in terms of getting access to security infrastructure to get information on Islamic radicals that are kind of increasing in Africa, and perhaps to even get more intelligence on China and Russia activities in Africa. So Liberia is naturally a place where they may want to position most of their intelligence infrastructure. Like they built a new NSA building in Brewerville. I think White Plain or so. They built it. So they might be trying to do probably more than that. And they need not just a cooperation on the Weah government and according to the CIA headquarters and say, look, these are our intelligence we get in the region and we want to have this access in Liberia. Can we sign this? It's possible. But the fact that the Weah administration cannot even come up with something superficial to say to the public, for me, is telling. And I would just leave the ambassador thing and consider a normal, change your guy within the State Department.
How normal? With everything that you've said.
Like Dr. Du said, you said probably 2 years or so, or 3 years, you move on.
2 years. The normal is 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, we move on. So that's how I would look at it. Because to read anything more than that, if you look at McCarthy's background, McCarthy came from advocacy background. Okay, he's a lawyer. He came from advocacy background. That's why his approach to diplomacy is a little different. He's an advocate. This guy that is coming, he's managed complex security relations with different countries in different regions. So, and of course, they have concern in West Africa. What is happening in Burkina Faso, in Mali, Niger, those countries? Yes, the United States does have concern because the United States have direct flights from many countries in Africa to New York. They do have concern on those issues.
Dr. Duke, normally, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the United States, when there is a pending election, would not want to, for the State Department or for the president to be calling the president of that country to the U.S. It happened that the CIA invited President Weah, and now the ambassador is changed. Too many coincidences going on here. And so we can't outrule that these are completely separate issues.
I will say this thing that I said the last time. I don't think the president coming to the CIA was a big strategic move on the part of the U.S. This is something that they could have negotiated in Monrovia,
right?
Decided where to go, who to talk to, and then look at the army. The U.S. conducted, military exercises in Africa in the last two months. First one was in the Basin of the Congo with some countries in that region. And the next one was, I don't know if it happened, but it was planned to be in March, where Ghana and Ivory Coast were taking part with Nigeria, with the U.S. troops on sea and on air and on land. Liberia was not invited. So the U.S. 2-3 weeks ago was doing exercise in the region. They didn't even invite Liberia. So why would they come to Liberia and call the Liberian president and say, come, let's talk about security in the region? No. I think, we're putting too much into this thing. I think people are taking, and it shows something about our mentality, this psyche of dependency, where people think that everything that the U.S. does in Liberia has a deep, deep, deep meaning. Somehow that it would change our, that this election will be changed by the U.S. It will not happen. Weah had an opportunity to come to Washington. He had a visa from January that had a 6 months stand. It's the first open visa he had. He was coming to the U.S. He had a promise with this guy. When I come to DC, I'll call you to visit you. He went to visit the CIA. Stop it. There's nothing. There's nothing there. That's why there's no secret in DC, especially now at the state level, at the federal level. Federal government will not negotiate with George Weah through the CIA. It doesn't happen that way. If it were the defense issue, you go to the Pentagon. He will not go to the CIA. If it were a foreign affairs relationship in the region, you go to the State Department and talk to the secretary and his people at the State Department, not at the CIA. CIA was a visit because the guys say, come see me when you're in Washington. I'll come visit the CIA. You want to go visit the CIA tomorrow, you ask for it, they may give you a tour for 2 hours and take you to the cafeteria and give you coffee. So we should start this big thing that George Weah came and did some big negotiation that he could do here that he could not do in Monrovia as a president.
But you understand that it's unprecedented.
Yeah, but well, normally people don't get up, oh yeah, when I come to this, I'll go see the CIA. I want to go visit the CIA. Why would we have like 5-6 American officials traveling to Africa in the last 3-4 months? The Secretary of State in many countries, the Vice President, who you call again, the Secretary of Treasury, and countless of people who have been on the UAE in Africa. Who went to Liberia? The guy on corruption. Please, let's not fool ourselves that U.S. is calling George Weah to come do some big strategic meeting about West Africa. What does he know? Especially he was alone he was the only one who went in there with one person. The defense minister was not there. Justice was not there. Finance was, these are his brain people. They were not there. They just took him on a tour and came back. Why would George Weah sit in a strategic meeting about West Africa that the CIA director would talk to him about for 2 hours? This is like, let me add this. I read, when you read Dr. Dunn, you learn a few things. For many, many years, the oligarchy, the old, one-party system, used to pay so much money in the U.S. to be seen, because that was part of the political domination, to be seen as supported by the U.S. Therefore, they came here and spent a lot of money. Every trip, they had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even to get Carter to stop over in Monrovia, they said, no, you can't come here. We need you because this is our country. You brought us here. Don't worry about these things. That the old oligarchy, use that impression that we are so close to America. Now, Weah and his people are developing a narrative. We did this, we did that. So he is with us. No, guys, let's run this thing differently.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next part of the president's return. As I said, when the president visited the USA and also the UAE. In the UAE, we heard about this $50 billion contract. You guys heard too, right? And I was reading the Gulf news, and the way it was carried out, the way it was being portrayed in the news was that our government signed a $50 million contract with the UAE. And that was the news, right? But the more and more information came out, it was not exactly that. And here is what I read in the Gulf newspaper. I posted the link. It says, the president of the Republic of Liberia to the UAE, Blue Carbon, the UAE-based entity, and the Republic of Liberia through the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, signed a memorandum of understanding to implement carbon removal projects in forest sector under Article 6 of the 2015 Paris Agreement. And it went on, it said, through this MOU, Blue Carbon will focus on implementing low carbon strategies, activities, projects, and programs, specifically the development of various carbon emission reduction projects in the forest sector in Liberia. And here is where we heard about the 50 billion. They say recently the UAE invested more than $50 billion in renewable energy projects across 40 countries, and it plans to double that over the next decade. Mr. Gonglo, you heard about this 50 billion. What does that tell you? Was it something that came from the government, or the through trial balloons out there, or somebody was trying to portray the government that, hey, our president is coming home and he's bringing home the bacon? What's your knowledge of this 50 billion?
Well, Dennis, is difficult to say because the thing is, the Weah administration is actually operating in secrecy, because on such a major trip, when he arrived back in Liberia, they, at least a press secretary to the president, should hold a press conference to brief the nation, to brief the journalists, and say, look, we just returned. Even right there at the RI, they should be able to say something to the press that gathered them to receiving, but they are mute on those issues. So it just lends itself to speculation. But for me, personally, from what I've observed over the years on Liberia, yes, Liberia is a rich country, but we don't have the capacity to spend $50 billion. Even if they brought in $1 billion today, we don't have the capacity to spend that, because over time and over again, different donor agencies have said Liberia lacks absorption capacity. I remember in 1993, UNDP resident rep, Dr. Kankongi, I think he was in Kenya. There was a strike by OFA, University of Liberia Faculty Association. He came to the university. He said, look, UNDP has money. We need university professors to write research proposal. We are sending money back from UN account in Liberia because Liberia lacks the capacity to spend this money. Okay? World Bank has said the same thing many times, that part of the failures of the PRS was we lack the capacity, both in infrastructure or technical, and because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the means to spend a lot of money that Liberia could spend. So even if you put up $1 billion today and say we're going to invest in infrastructure, we don't even have the technical institution firms to build that. We're going to rely on foreign firms to do that. So they talk about even $50 billion investment. I mean, it's just laughable. I think it's a scam. Just like Iboma and whatever Ma was a scam. This again is a scam. And if I were advising President Weah, I wouldn't allow that to happen, because you have 2 or 3 agreements that your government have announced, and they all turn out to be fake. Why would we allow that to happen? The guys are not smart.
But where do you think this is coming from, right? It was somebody trying to mislead the country that indeed the government is bringing home 50 billion?
Well, I think for me personally, Dennis, it's hard to say. One, it could be the Minister of Finance, Samuel Tuer, playing mind game, which is not a good mind game for him. 2, it could also even be people in the opposition who trying to make a propaganda and say, you know what, these guys are noted for lying, so we just post something there to make them defend it. It's possible. But the fact that the government is mute on this issue to say, hey, I mean, even publish the agreement they signed, because as the way it came out and the picture and the way it was trending on social media, it appeared as though President Weah was signing the agreement. It was a bilateral agreement between 2 countries. Like what you just showed is actually like a company. You see? So it's important for us to be a little bit, for our government to be transparent, because they have been paid by taxpayers. It is our money that took them to Emirates, to wherever they went, it is our money. It's not their money. They went there because they represent our interests. When they come back, they're supposed to make public what discussion did they hold on behalf of all of us collectively. They are not saying that. So it lends itself to speculations and where we are now. Our system, we don't even know what really was. Is there an agreement? If there is, publish it in the newspaper. Spend little money. Take central a page of it, publish it. Put on the executive marshal web page, put it as a PDF document. We download it and read it. We know the quantity. We know probably the schedule of implementation. How much will come in the first year? How much will come in the second year? Is it a 5 years investment plan in the forest sector? Is it a 10 years? I mean, we don't know.
Thank you. Thomas, the president said nothing. His press secretary, nobody said anything about this. Are we entitled to know what happened? And if we're supposed to know, what can we do so that we can know?
So, Dennis, I think you went to the background of this. I think what had happened is that the government tried to tie the MOU with the company into an initiative that UAE is leading as a country. And I think, like you said, that is where the whole issue of the confusion is coming from. And this is a sector that is opening up. One of those issues that have happened over the past couple of months is the issue of countries that have forests. They are trying to come together to be able to harness the resources that their forests will offer in terms of actually the fight against climate change. I think a couple of months ago, Brazil, Congo, and some other countries were coming together to form a cartel of forest countries. And when I read that news, I was even thinking, why Liberia, we have the largest forest reserve in West Africa, why can't we join? So there's that initiative, is ongoing. Belize as a country had even recently signed an agreement, and it took off a portion of their debt because they have a lot of coral reefs in the ocean and other things that they have in their country. So this is something that is really going on. But the way they brought the two together, and like you said, this is where the confusion actually comes from. And if you go to the front page Africa story, this is where for me I get a little frustrated, because the headline of it is Liberia, UAE. That is a government-to-government relationship. So the way it was carried as if Liberia has signed an agreement with UAE. And then when you go in the very article, they then bring in the company, which is Blue Carbon. And in the final sentence of that publication that Front Page Africa made, it says Blue Carbon will make sure that the agreement is implemented. So then the question is, who was it signed with? Was it signed with UAE as a country, or was it signed with the company? So that brings a lot of confusion. Everybody is interpreting. And I think when it came out, then the government, some folks, I saw on social media, they were going back to this article where UAE has said that they were going to, put up 50 billion to be able to spend on climate change. And I think it's part of their campaign to be able to hope to host the climate conference this year. So there are a lot of these different things that are happening. But in terms of saying that that agreement was between Liberia and UAE, that was misleading the public. And there's no way UAE, like everyone is saying, is going to give us that money. If UAE put up $50 billion globally to fight climate crisis, how can they take all of the money and give it to Liberia? How about the other countries? What do they get? But in terms of whether the president made a comment on there, I watched the video of his return when he was asked what was the overall trip. That's one thing he spoke about briefly, that is a follow-on to the climate conference that he attended in Egypt. And there was this agreement that Liberia signed. But I think a lot of clarification has been made around this thing. And so people should really understand that that's not money that is going to come to Liberia tomorrow.
Who made a clarification?
The president, when he was asked about his trip, he did mention this issue of the he said,
biodiversity.
Biodiversity and all of that. Yeah.
So yeah, and the government itself has not come up to say we signed a $50 billion MOU.
I haven't seen that, and that is where for me, like the others have said, if that agreement is signed, for instance, I know for a fact that the Minister of Finance has been working before COP. The Minister of Finance has been doing some work on this whole issue of carbon markets and all of that. You remember when the president went to COP 27, the president made a comment on that those countries that have the resources need to play a role. They also need to benefit from the resources that they are protecting. I know the Minister of Finance has been working on that. But how the Minister of Finance, whether it was intentional, they threw this out, and if they were not the one to pull it in the media, how could they allow that kind of information to go to the public when it was misrepresenting what the government actually signed with a company in the UAE is something we should all be really investigating.
Dr. Duke, why is the government silent and allowing rumors to take over? As we say, when BC failed to report, ELDC take over. Is this deliberate? And what else do we know about the trip, and how can we know? Is that how it normally happens? You were with President Salif.
No, no, it's not how it happens. I think they got what they wanted. They got a lot of publicity about nothing. You know, my grandmother used to say, you know, she gave you onion, say, peel it. You know, you take one after one, you know, you peel the onion. What do you get at the end? Nothing. So we're sitting here discussing nothings. $50 billion, $50 million, there's no head, no tail. Nobody's telling anything. They just put, you know, concocted something. They got a press running with a story. The president, usually when he comes, he goes to a church where he speaks and then say, this is what I've been doing. But Weah went to the World Cup for 48 days, came back. What did he tell anyone? 5 ministers went to somewhere in South Asia to go negotiate $500 million with a company that did not even have a website, or did not have, and then came back and said, yeah, we're going to build a highway from Monrovia to the southeast in 2 years. You know, those things, you know, sometimes there are things that you don't even pay attention to, because you say, okay, this is a scam. It's a scam in every sense. Scam, political scam, probably not financial. You got nothing to gain from it. But this is all games, political games. You know, you spin the news, you say, okay, they never said that. Who can ask Samuel Stewart tomorrow? Oh, did you guys really sign a $50 billion thing with who? He would say, did I say that to you? Do you hear that from the government? And he stops right there. He said, I didn't tell you, your front page reporting. Who gave the story to front page? Who gave the story to other newspapers, to publishers? So that's the whole issue. So we are talking about nothingness. People throw a balloon out and then we jump on it. This UAE trip, Washington, D.C., first of all, the president does not sign these kind of agreements. The Minister of Justice and the Minister of Finance and whoever is in charge will sign it. That's one. Two, EPA was not there. FDA was not there. The Minister of Agriculture was not there. So who was talking about climate issue and forestry? These are the three agencies that deal with forestry in Liberia. They were not there. And how long have they been negotiating? You don't wake up one night and say, oh, Chief, I'm in town. I'm going to talk to you. Yes. Oh, by the way, we have $50 billion. We're going to give it to you. Do you do that? State government?
Dr. Duke, let me read for you, those who were there. The MOU was signed between Samuel D. Tuet, Junior Finance Minister and Chair of Climate Change, Jenny Cooper, Minister of Agriculture, attested by Frank Musa Dean, Minister of Justice, Len Eugene Nambwe, Commissioner of Maritime, C. Mark Doyen, Managing Director of Forestry, and Wilson Tappe, Executive Director of EPA. And
well, okay, so what is the fact? Where do you go from here? I mean, they signed with a company. What is blue carbon? Does blue carbon have $50 billion to invest? That's the first thing we need to ask. What are their background? What is the experience? Where they have done it before? And how long? The problem is, how long has this been going on? How long they've been negotiating? Have they been in Liberia? Have they worked on the ground with people?
Mr. Gonglo, this is political, you would think.
Right. I'm still thinking on the motive of it and how does it benefit the government? Because it's possible to benefit a government that has a track record of attracting donor support or money from multinational companies. But this government hasn't proven for the past 5 years or 6 years to have done any of that. The only attempt they made have all ended in catastrophe, like the Igbo map. So because they don't have that track record, if they try to do something like this, it won't benefit them because the public will be suspecting that, oh, this could be another Igbo map agreement. No, so I don't know how it will benefit them. If they did, if that's a plan, but then I would say they're not being smart because they need to read the tea leaves. They need to read the history. That immediately when it came to power, they got the legislature to even sign to ratify a bogus agreement that not a dime came to Liberia after that. But Liberia was like giving a guarantee for someone to go credit money in Liberia's name. And it became a fiasco. So I don't know how it will benefit if that was the intent, because they don't have that record of attracting, development finance. They don't have that.
Mr. Kana, is the government or some elements in the government trying to confuse the opposition by throwing shiny objects here and there so that they can run after it? Imagine saying this, and people go for it, right? And then imagine the Lone Star game that one of the legislators say, hey, this is a CDC Lone Star, and people are they trying to throw things here and there and get the opposition to chase those kind of shiny objects?
So Dennis, the issue is you want to do that, but you have to understand that there are implications. Like I'm saying, this whole issue of the forest sector and all of the benefit that Liberia can get is something, to me, we should genuinely be building our capacity to be able to harness. Our forest is just training to be another resource in addition to gold, diamond, and everything that we have. So in the next couple of years, we are genuinely going to be in that sector. So when you start with this foundation of giving a story where you cause the public not to trust you, because the point is the opposition is there. There are people who are other Liberians who are not part of the opposition. So if you think you are going to throw it out and it will go against the opposition, you are reducing the trust that the Liberian people have in you as a government, especially building on previous ones like Mr. Gonglo was talking about. So when you have a genuine deal tomorrow on in the carbon sector, who do you expect is going to believe? So this is where the government really has to be very careful in terms of throwing these informations out. And sometimes I said to myself, and I'm saying, sometimes the government is behaving as if you are the first generation, maybe in your family, to go to school. Like you go to school, you graduate from LU, you go back to the village. Everything you tell the people, you expect them to believe because they might not understand exactly what you're saying. You are speaking big words. But the point is that Liberians today are not the Liberians of 2006. You have a lot of people who have gone to school, who are using the internet to be able to research. So since this news came out, a lot of people have gone, they've investigated this company. They know that the company was established in 2021. This is a company exactly just trying to make business, to make deals with these third world developing countries. You sign an agreement with them, and they will then go to financial institutions and be able to get some resources. But when you start on this ground of breaking the trust of the people, think about even the impact that is going to have on you and the company, right? It was just an MOU between you and the company, and your press is putting it out as if it is between the country and UAE, who is trying to host a global conference. So there are implications. If you want to try these kind of approaches to say, I just want to throw a bit out there for the opposition to talk about, you have to understand that these days it's easier to just use the keyboard and be able to research and see whether this is true or not. And considering that amount of money, 50 billion, who was easily just going to trust that?
Dr. Duke.
Yeah, he asked the question, who's going to trust that? You know, one thing we always forget sometimes, Weah may be what he is, but he's surrounded by the same people who advised Doe and Taylor. And he's facing an electorate that doesn't care about anything. That is base. So between these two groups, they can sell anything. It's the Flamazon thing, but in politics. We create the biggest lie possible. Nobody will believe it, but nobody can challenge it. Can somebody shoot you in the head with a bazooka, and the bazooka goes through, and then you still holding the head in your hand? It's the biggest possible lie. But who's going to challenge it? And how are we going to challenge this?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. I have my panel, Mr. Kalebo Gonglo, Dr. Abdullah Dukle, and Mr. Thomas B. Kane. We are discussing this issue. The first issue, President Weah's return, what did he bring? And the ambassador's change, and also the 50 billion that we're supposed to get. I was asking somebody, I said, imagine if we get 50 billion, what would we do with it? Maybe that would be another topic. If we're actually getting 50 billion, what would we do? But that would be another topic. That takes us to the former Vice President Joseph Newman Boakai in the Unity Party. There have been rumors out there about a vice presidential running mate. We have Councillor Tiawan Gonglo who's running. There is no pressure on him for a vice presidential running mate. We have Mr. Alexander B. Cummings. The pressure on Mr. Boakai is not the same pressure on Cummings for a vice presidential running mate. Some say the VP has brought it upon himself, and there's high expectation that he should produce one in the shortest possible time. We are hearing some names out there, starting with Senator Yombli Kanga, who he worked with in CPP. And also, when the unit LP broke apart, the Yombli faction endorsed Boakai and the Belated faction endorsed Mr. Cummings. We are also hearing the name of Nimba County Senator Jeremiah Kwan Kun, who is thought to have been donated or recommended by the so-called political godfather of Nimba County, Prince Johnson. He's also in the midst. And talk show host Henry Pedro Costa, in fact, he's the only person who has spoken about it publicly that yes, indeed, his name was also in the hat. And he boasted about being even more popular than anyone who's in the running. He made some allegations against Jeremiah Kuhn. He ended up apologizing on social media, but he did not retract his allegation that Mr. Kuhn is dealing in human parts. He didn't do that. What does that mean? We also have the name Kofi Woos. I mean, I heard it from just few sources that he's also a possible contender for VP for Mr. Boakai. Let me start with Mr. Gonglo. Mr. Gonglo, why is this pressure on Boakai? It's like everybody is waiting for him to pick first. And a follow-up to that is, which of these will be a better choice for Mr. Boakai and why?
Well, Dennis, before I speak to this issue, I'd like to just be very clear from the get-go. I'm a brother of Councillor Tiawan Gonglo, okay? There has been other proposal in the opposition camp that probably Councillor Gonglo and Boakai working together might be a better choice. So I'm going to make my analysis here with the caveat that I'm just speaking as FOL analyst. Second, I'm speaking basically based on the names that have been put forward, right? So I don't say something and somebody say, oh, this guy didn't talk about his own brother, okay? Because my brother's name has not been put forth in this group, okay? So I want to clarify that first before I say anything. But on the substantive issue though, there are two reasons why I believe Ambassador Boakai is under pressure. In 2017, he was the last to name his running mate. And that delay in itself created anxiety and expectation. And everybody was saying, hey, the old man is a wise man. He's going to bring the best of the best to be his running mate. And when he named his running mate, that ticket was killed. You know, I mean, there's so many things out there to say, and that made it difficult, to kind of sell out there. Okay, that's one. So I think learning from that experience, I don't know whether he's not treading the same path. If you take with respect to the opposition now, that I mean, if you look at the opposition can you can say, well, he's on par. No opposition candidate has named that running mate. But if you take into account the fact that he has the biggest opposition party in the country, then and you expect that, okay, there is naturally an expectation that the biggest opposition party will be the lead opposition to go against the ruling establishment. Then you say, oh, but Weah has already named this running mate and they are campaigning already. Why the opposition is delaying? So that's a legitimate question and concern to raise. Okay. But on the names that have been put forward, without doing any critical analysis, because we don't have the time, I would say, if I were advising Boakai today, based on the names that have been put forward, the natural thing is to stay with your traditional ally, those who have been in the trenches with you. Because usually when people switch alliances, they switch alliances based on motivation. So, and you don't know, and all of the motivations will not be known probably even the first year or the second year. You have to wait to know along the line to know why did they switch from a ruling party that was giving them so much leverage, that has given them so much money, why all of a sudden they're running away from this opposition. And if you look at it, part of the reason the MDR has given, it's not fundamental reason. They say, oh, Weah is not giving more job to Nema people. But the MDR is supposed to be a national party, not just a Nema party, right? They say, oh, our struggle is just because you are not giving job to Nema people. The second, oh, okay, Aslam Mita, $7 million the government is not giving. Those are not fundamental reasons why, anybody will believe you that you are truly a genuine opposition. Because if those conditions, if they start giving job to your people, they pay the $7 million, what becomes of you? You probably might go back. So for me, if I were in the Unity Party, if I were a Boakai supporter, I would say stay with your traditional allies. That would be the likes of Henry Costa, the likes of Senator Yomdi Kanga. That's what I would say. Stay with your traditional allies. Because those are the people who have been in the trenches. Those are the people who fought in the CPP with you. So stay with them.
But would it also make sense to throw another name in the list here? And what do you think each of them bring? Those who will stay with.
Well, okay. So you see, Senator Yomdi Kanga is a Bassa woman, but the record shows that Bassa people, to more or less, which is a good thing. I don't think they vote on Trump. Because if they were, Bassa is the second largest ethnic group in Liberia. You find them in Nimba, you find them in Grand Bassa, in Rivers, in Monrovia by large, number, in Monserrato, in Magibi as well. In Bon County, also the Cocoa area, because that's where it is our region my mother came from. So you find them all probably in 5 or 6 countries. The fact that Bronsky could now win on the strength of the Bassa ethnic group, and this is a man who spoke fluent Bassa without adding one English to it. Okay, so that tells you that Brazilians are not, they don't make this big ethnic what maybe for them is the best judgment at the time. So I would say, Yomli comes from a very big ethnic group, but the record doesn't show that these people usually follow their ethnic, their ethnic people. The other person is Henry Costa in that midst. Costa brings a lot to the table too. He's young. He's He's articulate, very intelligent, smart. I would say Costa is a radical progressive. I mean, we haven't tested him with power, but his ideas about how a country should look, what a country should do for citizens. I mean, if you listen to his show, yes, he's well read. He read. He followed the lives of Thomas Sankara, George Rawlings. He talks about revolutionaries, who fought for their people. He's well read. Reading is one thing, and sometimes implementing what you read is another thing. But on the face of it, yes, he will excite the young people, because if you want a vice presidential candidate that will be very aggressive towards your opponent, that will destroy your opponent with argument, with propaganda, Costa is your man.
Thank you. Mr. Kane, what does a VP or a vice presidential running mate bring to the table? And if you consider that, is Mr. Joseph Newman Boakai proceeding correctly with his shortlist, with those on his shortlist?
So there are many things that a vice president will have to bring. I mean, constitutionally, that's the person who's supposed the president to run the country. So you expect that person must also have the capacity to be able to run the country. Because if you see, for instance, every time the president leaves the country, the president leaves a minister to run the affairs of the government in collaboration with the vice president. So it has to be somebody who, normally we say, okay, it has to be somebody who has the ability to lead from day one if the president steps up. But even when the president does not step up, you still have a role to play. And I think this is why it is often the choice of the person who becomes the standard bearer on a ticket to pick their vice president, because they know exactly where their weaknesses are. It could be across sectors. Say, for instance, you have a finance background, but you know that the problem in Liberia right now is that we need to invest in agriculture, and therefore I want a vice president that knows about agriculture, because I want him to bring some technical knowledge to this table, and therefore you do your pick that way. Also, it could be the case of gender. In some instances, people want the vice president to be a female, so you have a balanced ticket, because we are in this age of gender equality and the issue of gender equity. So therefore, you want to pick a female to be able to come and have the other divide of the population represented on the table. In some instances, it's the issue of somebody who will come and be able to maybe be to advocate for you. But even if you pick somebody simply on a base of advocacy, only for elections, because when the government does take place, the government has machinery to be able to speak. Your vice president cannot be your spokesperson. And so for me, I mean, there's a lot that you will have to consider to really be able to select that person. Also, you have to make sure that if you don't have a lot of numbers to get you across the line, you have to pick somebody who's going to bring some numbers to you. Because if you look back at our previous presidential candidates, I listened to some analysts and they say that the weakness that Bronski had, piece to his ashes, is that he never ever selected a vice presidential candidate that added onto his number. He was always picking people that did not really bring votes to him. So in some instances, it's competence. In some instances, it's gender. In some instances, it's the issue of votes. But I mean, we will all say that the vice president is proceeding cautiously, but he's getting close to that line when there's this anxiety, because he did it in 2017. I think the selection was done around August, and there was not a lot of public approval for it. So I think this is where this pressure is coming from. And to me, I would say there's a lot of concern about who he's picking, because people think that this election is actually between him and George Weah. So that's where all this pressure is coming from. Going back to the CPP, as I conclude, I think in the minds of most Liberians, that was a seat that they had given to Mr. Cummins. But on to the end of 2021, when he said he only could become a president, that seat then became vacant. And like Mr. Gonglo was saying, in that cycle, people like Senator Yombli Kanga Lawrence started to realize that, hey, here is a seat that everyone had thought was going to go to Cummins, but he's no longer sitting in the seat. He and Joe are standing up and trying to battle over the seat of the presidency. And so that ambition came in the CPP. We heard even Mr. Ure had an interest until he came out and said he's not interested in the position. But to conclude on Henry Costa, I think based on the post that he's been putting out these few days, like he said, he's the only person that came out and said he was being considered. But after that post on Jeremiah Kuhn, there was another post he made, I read, and he said that anyone JMB selects, he will go along, he will support the person. So I think he's unique because he put himself, he said he's considered, but I think he's gradually withdrawing himself.
So if you look at this list, is he proceeding correctly? Is he... this list, if he pick anyone from this list, it will be a good pick, or should he go outside? What does this list tell you about Mr. GNB?
So for me, I think this list is, I mean, previously what we heard was that the list was long, right? I think Front Page Africa had even published a list that had, I think there's this Liberian that is at the UN. There's a lot of other people who were being considered. So I think as we are getting close to the election, what we have now is actually a short list that has these names. And like I was speaking, I mean, if you look at Senator Yomli Kanga Lawrence, she faced that issue of being a woman, and therefore she will represent the women population. If you look at Senator Jeremiah Kuhn, it's more of that issue of the scramble over the votes in Nimba, right? And former Minister Kofi Woods, I would say he has been an advocate for many years. He has served in the government. He has history of managing institutions, and he will bring that. Henry Costa, of course, he's an advocate. He's been talking a lot. The only problem we have is that many people are saying that he hasn't really managed anything. I think he has managed a radio station. He's now managing a studio. No one takes away the advocacy from him, but the vice president is going to be the president of the Senate. You need somebody who has that experience with managing people, with managing institutions, and all of that. So what do you make of this list?
Good. Can anyone of this be a very good vice president for Boakai?
Overall, I think it's a good short list. We'll just wait to see who he actually picks.
Thank you. Mr. Dr. Duke, you've been in the chair where people are picking vice president. And with this list, what do you think the former vice president is considering here?
I would say the vice president is considering somebody who will bring votes and someone who he can trust and can rely on. And he will take his time to do it. I think the whole process of selecting is, we always put a stake in terms of ethnicity, is unfortunate. But I would say again, if ethnicity was to make anybody win elections, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf would have never been president. She was not. It's just, you have to, there are two things you do. You set up a campaign team, you run your campaign to be president. The vice president really doesn't matter. I can tell you that. The vice president, all the talk about Nimba bringing vote, it's not sure. We never seen that. We never seen a total, compact group of people voting for one party and say, okay, this is 90% for these people. And this is not even 2005. We were in 2011, 2017, and people have grown and seen different things. So this ethnic politics that we're playing around is something of our old minds. And I think Boakai will take his time. He would trust somebody and say, this is my running mate. When Mrs. Sirleaf picked him up in 2005, there were other people. There were a lot of people in the party, who have been in the party, advocate and all that. But she picked this man in from Lofa, although Alaji Kroma, who was occupying Lofa at the time, literally occupying Lofa, was also running for president. So she didn't get all of Lofa. It took a lot of maneuvering. It just depends. You put your team together and you campaign night and day, and the people will vote for you as a president. Nobody looks at the vice president. I mean, it's good to say, yeah, it's okay. If Nyombi is there, yeah, you may get, 5-10% more vote. If Costa is there, yeah, you may get, 1,000 or 2,000 more young people. But it's you, the president, that people vote for. And you should never, that's the work you do, and you work as if you are president and nobody else behind you, except the team that is supporting you. So I don't think the vice president selection is really a crisis. And I think Joe Boakai will take his time and he'll come up with a name that he wants. Yeah, there were names that, people talk about and say, yeah, this person is there, this person is there. But who is ready to be president? Because Boakai got two issues. He got health issues and he got age issues.
And that's what makes his vice presidential pick very crucial. Don't you agree?
So, yeah, in that case, yeah, he will have to make his mind about what he wants to do. You say, okay, I don't have 100% energy to do all these things 24 hours a day. Who can second me? Who can be at my door at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, we have to take care of this and have the experience to do it? Not just say, yeah, this person is from that ethnic group. No. If the ethnicity was an issue, Madam Salif would have never been president.
That's true.
Never. She would have, and she didn't have money. I remember, let me adjust, you always ask me my experience. I remember one day I was at the campaign headquarters. 2 tires blew up. We didn't have money to buy tires. People thought we had money. We didn't have a dime. Barney Sherman had money. He had structure in every town in Liberia. Bromskin had more money. I said 2 tires blew up. I was standing there. We didn't have money to get the tires. That was the campaign, but we built on it. We did messaging, and Madame Salif never sat in an office. She was up 7 o'clock in the street. It took us 9 hours to go from Morovia to Bassa, 9 hours. And she still made a speech. So that's how you campaign. You campaign as a president. You don't campaign, my vice president going to bring, no, the vice president ain't bringing nothing. The vice president you pick is a demonstration of your character as a leader.
Right, and that's what I was coming to, right? It seems that we have really forgotten about governance when it comes to picking the vice president. We are concentrating on who's bringing vote rich, this, vote rich, that.
Yeah, who you pick, because if you want to be president, your deficiencies. Look at Trump. With all his problems, he surrounded himself with generals and business leaders and big people who know more than him about politics. He kicked them out one by one, but he got inducted today. But definitely, he brought people who were like making him look good.
Yeah.
So that's the campaign. The president is running a campaign, not a vice president. Vice president is no. Boakai could have stayed home during 2005. He didn't have to do anything.
And Mr. Gonglo, this is where people are really, there are some I spoke to before the show, are very disappointed with this list, right? Because you talk about governance. You talk about governance. You consider Yombli Kanga a senator, but apart from being senator, we don't see much of what he has accomplished in the Senate. We see Mr. Henry Costa, who has no history of managing anything, and who most of the time his utterances tell that he's not very good with what he says. Most of the time he gets a foot in his mouth. He has no history of working whatsoever with someone like Jeremiah Cohn. All right. So what is he really considering here? Is it like, okay, let me just find someone who will give me vote and will worry about governance later? Considering his health and his age, is actually showing us who can be president maybe 2 or 4 years down the line. This is the kind of person he's presenting to us. Does this list satisfy you that you can have someone there who can do it?
Well, Dennis, like I said earlier, my own brother is a presidential candidate, and I believe he's the best person to be the next president of Liberia, because I believe Councillor Gongo brings a lot on the table. He has the capacity, the ability, the experience, and knowledge to address those issues that really need to be addressed, like the issue of governance, the issue of rule of law, fighting corruption. Councillor Gongo does have established credentials in those areas, right? But and we just hear probably analysis because we don't even know what is in Ambassador Man. List in the public may not even be the list that Boakai will be looking at. So we just here to more or less satisfy our ego. It may not be necessary what Boakai will consider at the end of the day. But here what I will say though, I just wanted to make this clarification. Because sometimes we come on this public forum, we tend to forget the issue in Liberia, a country that is almost 200 years old, we all agree a few months ago on this show that corruption was Liberia's number one issue, and that should be one of the issues in the 2023 elections, right? So this whole thing about experience in government, I don't value that. I value your personal performance and character, how you live and how you perform in public service. Because
and stop there. So when you consider that and looking at this list, I want you to speak to this list.
So this list, I don't want to begin to pinpoint at this point, but hey, there are others who are serving government who serve in a branch of government. Say, for example, the legislature has never been audited since 2006. So we can't even say whether they are what our records are in public service because they never availed themselves.
So you talk of integrity.
Well, yeah. So when John Molu even attempted to audit the legislature, they threatened him with contempt power. Not a single legislator said, "No, Molu, you can audit my office. I can avail to you what I have." Not a single legislator came out to say, "Molu, I will proffer a bill on the floor to ensure that the GSC audit the legislature." As we speak, no one in the legislature who has served, even who have been unelected and who has been elected, can say, "I have clean record."
Correct.
Okay? So that's not even something to debate because the record speaks for itself. Okay? So now, when you come to those who are served in executive position, the idea is to just look at GSC records. I don't have to call any name. So for me, we don't need to rely solely on experience in government. We need to look at what that person says publicly, what they think about public service, what they think the government should do.
What's about character?
So you can't discredit an advocate because the advocate.
No, I'm talking about character. What's about character and credibility?
Character is important. Character is important, and it's important. But it depends on what you're talking when you say character. It's a different. It's a whole range of issues you can debate around character, because there are some who people may, because some of the things people say about people in Liberia, sometimes we don't have the files. It would just be because somebody get out there on social media or in the news and say something. Sometimes what comes in the newspaper is paid for. We all know that. Liberian media, most time they are all for sale. They can write anything and say, well, according to reliable sources, and that's it. And the character will be after the fact. Okay. So, but look, so the point I just wanted to make that point clear first, that we cannot rely solely on experience, governmental experience.
So what should we rely on?
What we should rely on is, like Dr. Du said, let's look for the person who is on top of the ticket. What is that person's record? What does that person stand for?
Right, we get that. When we're talking about the vice president, what's the record? Should we look at the record?
Yeah, if we look, we should look at the record, but we should not look at governmental experience as the only thing, because the
but you're not telling me what else we should look at. You say, okay, let me go to Thomas. Thomas, what should we look at in this vice president? And this list, what does it represent to you? Does it represent what it takes for someone? Because if you consider the age and the health issue of Mr. Boakai, you want someone who is going to be president maybe in the next 4 or 5 years, right? Do you see? So if you are evaluating people on this list, what are you going to look at specifically?
So there is, I think it's one thing for us to evaluate the list, is another thing for the former vice president to decide what the qualities are that he needs and what is it that he needs at this time. If you look at the issue of competence, there are many other Liberians that are more competent than any of these people here. In terms of governance, with the current state of our country, we need to do a lot of hard work and a lot of hard and technical work to be able to move that country forward. But every election has its own momentum that it comes with. And sometimes politicians can just benefit from that moment. So like I said, this list, what we heard was that it was very long. It's getting shorter to the extent where it is coming to this point. So I don't know exactly what the former vice president wants.
What should he look for?
I mean, I as a Liberian would look for a very competent vice president.
And do you think anyone on that list is and you think that person is on that list?
I think, like I said to you, these people, each one of these persons has their own advantages that they have. Like I said, Senator Yomli Kanga Lawrence is a female. I mean, I wasn't talking about the issue of Nimba in Grand Bassa, for instance, purely in the sense of the tribal groups that they come from. But we don't also get that out of our politics. Because normally when you hear that, okay, the defense for Senator Yomli Kanga Lawrence is that the Bassa belt. That's what you hear people saying. And when you hear about Senator Okun, the people are saying, okay, the Nimba vote, how do we get it? But what I'm saying is that the vice president, like Dr. Duke said, he really does need a vice president that can help him run the government. And to me, the issue of how long does it take to do this, if you really want to campaign, you should select your vice president as early as possible to get on the campaign trail. But the more you drag this, the more it closes that space that you have to be able to select. Let's also not forget that there will be some fallout from the selection. When the selection is made, some people are not going to be happy. You need to resolve that before you go to the election. So waiting is the important thing, because everyone says he's the wise person, but waiting might have some cost. So let him make the choice.
Thank you, Dr. Duke. I want you to conclude on this. With the VP has not been able to pick his running mate. The last time he said, I did that late, so this time I'm going to do it sooner. And the speculation or what he said was around Jan or Feb, he was going to come out. That did not happen. Is the former vice president on track here to win this, or with all these decisions? Or some people would say the lack of being very forceful, being very coming up with these things swiftly and decisively.
Well, you could interpret. You could look at it from different perspectives. You could say the vice president want to keep the limelight on himself on the campaign. He had too many candidates. He had a lot of candidates for the position. So he's trying to, I think that he made the decision. He's at the point of maybe he's trying to,
People are saying that he has already leaned Jeremiah.
From what I heard, yeah, that he has made a decision. The issues now.
If that's the case, what do you make of it?
Well, those who have not been selected have to be brought on board. So maybe that's what he's working on. Because we've been hearing this, last week, 2 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, but we never know. But then again, somebody said, Gonglo said it, 2017, we thought, he was delaying because he was, brainwashing, brainstorming and doing research. And then he got a cut out of, he brought a mouse out of the mountain. And also what happened.
Thank you.
Definitely, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Dennis, I just want to make a quick point based on what Dr. Du said earlier. On the EGNE voting thing, it's actually kind of instructive to just emphasize that the point he made about Madame Seli would not have won because she comes from a very small EGNE group in Liberia. So she was able to build a coalition, right, to get the job done. So, but here are the records also. The late Councillor Charles Bronsky, a Bassa man, comes from the second largest ethnic group in Liberia. Pick Franklin Siakor, a Pele man, the largest ethnic group in Liberia that probably constitutes about 20% of the population. Both of them could not win. So what does it say? So the ethnic politics that sometimes people selfishly use as their trump card to sell themselves politically, sometimes it doesn't, I mean, it hasn't really served them well. Okay? Bosselman and Peterman combined, they didn't win. Arizona Cummings paid Jeremiah Solonte, a Peterman. He also didn't do the job. Okay? So, I mean, it takes character, it takes your personal record and your messaging, you know. And I know resources are important, but hey, like Du said, Sally, we were all in campaign in 2005. She didn't have money. They were all rumors. Or, I mean, who collected so much money here in the US? All of our amigo resources, we raised more than $100,000. I mean, the sum total that we expended there. Okay, so I mean, she didn't have money. So I think messaging and your personal record and how you relate to the people is also important. It's not just money and your ethnic group. No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Addie Tyler from Pennsylvania, and you're watching Focus on Liberia.
That takes us to our last issue of the night. That's this thing that has been introduced. I never heard it before, but it's becoming popular and popular, and they call that voters trucking. So, where does this come from? Why is it happening, and how can we stop it? Right? Or is it? Do we need to stop it in the first place? Let me start with Mr. Gonglo, who know a little more about voting or elections. Mr. Gonglo, voters trucking. I don't know, and I used to ask the question: what does it mean to say I come from Sino or I come from Lofa? Is it tribe? Is it where you were born? Is it where your parents come from? So if you consider that, I come from Sino, I'm in Monrovia, I'm in Bannersville. So there is election. I'm getting in truck going to Sino to vote. I understand people from Nimba mainly do that. They don't like to vote in Monserrato, and that's why the Nimba population is through the roof most of the time. So what is responsible for voter trucking? Is it a good thing, bad thing?
Well, Dennis, it depends on how one looks at it. Okay. But to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen any law written on that you know one must register or it is illegal to register outside of where you live. I have not seen any law on that. Probably there has been.
What does NEC require?
You must meet the voting age
and register anywhere you want.
And go and register when you attain the voting age. Basically, that's what, even if you're going to be challenged, maybe they want you to show birth certificate if you do have in the villages. If somebody challenges your age, or the town chief or the elders in the village will come and vouch for you to say, yeah, we know this child was born in our hand and blah, 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 and say this child is at this age.
But where does NEC say you should register? Where you live, where you were born?
Yeah, you register in your constituency.
What constitutes constituency?
Well, there are different, like in 2011, when they came out with the resolution, which was not threshold, which was not a threshold, they came out with a resolution that, no county should be one constituent, where there will be no one constituent county. At minimum, there should be 2 representatives and 2 senators. If you have a small population and we're going to give X number of constituents to big counties, to this, and they distribute it politically, right? Because it's a political process as well, as much as it's also a technical process, because they didn't set a threshold. So then they went on, they took time, people from NEC, people from I believe the Ministry of Planning at the time. There were mappers who went out there to demarcate, to say here, this area would be constituency number 1, or electoral district number 1, okay? And they did that all through the country, right? Mm-hmm. So now we are even at this point again. Part of the complication, I think that's the issue ANC raised, that the NEC is registering now when there has been no constituency demarcation. So it makes it even harder to say you are trucking, because No constituency. People
Right.
just register.
So let's say the area in Bannersville, Ophir, near Ben Stop, they where I live. So
Yeah.
that become a constituency. Is that what it is? Because I live there?
Yeah, because when they draw the constituency, yes, that place will definitely fall in your constituency.
So if I leave that constituency now and go to Dodrigan to register, is that wrong? In sign up?
Well, so Adule is wrong. Okay. Adule is wrong. But there are a number of factors that can influence that also, though. Why if I'm from Donikin, I currently live in Monrovia, but I expect that by election time, I have these activities. I will actually be in Donikin, but not Monrovia. I don't want to go to Donikin in September and then have to make my way back to Monserrado to vote. So I could say, you know what? I will just go and register in Donikin because election time I will be there and the rules are bad. I will be engaged in my activities. I don't want to abandon my activities and come to. I could make that consideration. That's a personal decision I'll make. But look, Dennis, we can make the politics of this. I've heard a lot. Voter trucking, people registering, cross-registering where they don't live, where it's not that normal, usual place of residence, historically has been happening, particularly when we have this newfound democracy. In 2011, I was standing in Ganta on the eve of election in 2011. I saw buses, car motor coming from Monrovia. There was no place to even host the people in Ganta. I mean, and some of the people didn't even come from Nimba. I saw people cross in from Guinea. You know, I mean, so in fact, I will go back to 1997 when we were doing voter registration in Nimba in 1997. You won't believe number of people that crossing from Guinea to register in Ganta. Okay, we have initially planned just small voting registration center, but on the day of registration, the people came from Guinea. We have to then start opening new registration center because they have to register and go back to Guinea. You see, so it's sort of it's a difficult stuff sometimes to deal with. For me, I would say, except the legislature deal with this issue, I don't know how they're going to deal with it because even if they make a law, we don't have identification based on residency in Liberia. So if I come to them and say, yeah, I live here, except in one village where the township can say this person does not live here. But in Ganta, if I can say, yeah, I'm registering here, how do you challenge it? So
let's resolve this piece before we come back to you. Let me go to Thomas. This whole idea of constituency, you know, how is that established and what is considered trucking?
So constituency is an electoral term and is normally determined by a threshold like Mr. Gongulu was saying. So when the census is done, we then use that census data to come up with the number of representatives that we have. We set the threshold first. Let's say we are going to have a threshold of 75,000. So that means each constituency is going to be 75,000 persons. And those persons are not necessarily all voters because the representatives are representing people.
Exactly.
They're not only representing those who vote for them. So if we say the constituency is going to be 75,000, then you go to Bomi, for instance, and say how many persons are in Bomi. You have maybe 76,000. Then, of course, Bomi will have only one constituency based on that population threshold. So that's how it actually needs to be set. So if you go to bigger counties like Nimba, the first electoral district is going to have 75,000. So essentially what the Election Commission does is to use the census data to draw those electoral boundaries. So you would take, this village has 25,000 persons. The other village has 30,000 persons. You keep adding communities until it gets to that 75,000. So it becomes the electoral district. So this is why it's called electoral district, because we already have administrative districts, which are there for governance and running the government. So these electoral districts are for representation purposes. So that's the way they should be decided. But the issue of voter trucking has been there. In 2011, I worked with an institution that was directly supporting the Elections Commission with the administration of the elections, which was a donor-funded project. And this issue of trucking will stay around. But I think what is happening is that the magnitude of it is increasing. There are more people entering the market. And then the next thing that is happening now is that the resistance to voter trucking and floating voters is also increasing. Because we saw in the previous election in Cape Town, for instance, people went and registered, and then on the day of election, people stopped them that you are no longer going to come here to decide for us who's going to be our representative, and you go back to Monrovia and then live in Monrovia while we are here. And the people abandon us and go back to Monrovia with you. So they started stopping them. So even right now, there's a lot of issues with it. Bikano. In fact, I saw a video in Bopolu, where some citizen group got together and stopped a vehicle and impounded a vehicle that was carrying people to go in for them to register. And the guy had a bandage on his foot that I think he said one of the police officers shot him because the police officer came and said he had no right to stop the vehicle from going where it wanted to go. So there is a lot of citizen resistance around this issue of voter trucking, people moving from one place to the other. The other point I will make, though, to me, in a democracy, it should be the individual's choice. Because the Election Commission law says you register where you vote. But to me, I think it's because of convenience. Because you register to the place where you vote. During the voter registration, even the election, there are some citizens who don't even vote where they register, like the police, the media. Because the point is they are covering the elections. So they might have registered in Monrovia, but if they are in Maryland on the day of voting and they are a police officer, they do allow them to vote. So if a citizen...
Only for the president.
Right. They only vote for the president. They don't vote for the representative and other people. So if a citizen, for me, as an individual citizen who comes from Nimba County, because we have this issue of domicile, even before you run in an election, you must be domiciled there for a length of time. Say, for instance, when Senator Snow was running in Bomi, there was this argument that he's not from there, he's not based there, and the Supreme Court said he has a farm there, he goes there, and therefore he's domiciled. So if an individual citizen who is from, let's say, Magibi is in Monrovia, and like Mr. Gonglo was saying, that I have a farm, I'm always there, maybe at the time of election, I'm going to be there, I want to go and register, I think they should be allowed. That's their choice to go and register. But the problem is people being paid. And this is why it becomes difficult to stop this. Because if you say a law must be made, back in 2011, that was the issue. We need to make a law against voter trucking. But who's trucking the people? It's those who want to be elected. So I don't see how that law can be passed. So to me, I think it's just civic education. Educate the people that is not good. Because in many instances, when you have these low train out, some of it come from here. Because they are going to get the people now to carry them to Basel and Nimba to register them. And during voting, they lost contact with them. And they are no longer available to go and vote.
It happens in a side note that the late Mobutu Nyepa and others, they truck people there to vote. So during the first round, well, legislative election is over, right? So time for the second round, I mean, you don't expect the senator representative to truck people again. So, President, maybe you need to add money so we can take them there. So they didn't vote. Dr. Duke, voters trucking.
Well, I think the technicians of elections have told you exactly what, I don't have much to add to it. I see another problem coming up, electoral violence. Tomorrow, for example, in the front page, there will be a story about Maurice Setuma and Alex Tyler. Alex Tyler said that Maurice Setuma was buying votes, registration cards, and Setuma accused him of sending people to go to his office and got arrested his workers, and somebody was there with the police or something, and arrested his workers. So this is what the dangerous part of that's more dangerous than what are you talking about? The trucking. The trucking, you can't stop it. As they said, there's no law to stop it. Legally, you can't tell somebody who's from Ganta, he said, yeah, I was born here, but I live in Monrovia, but I want to come here and vote for Gonglo. You can't stop that person. There's no legal way to, even in the US, that's happened. People live in Washington, they go vote in their state or counties, and they come back and work here. So people don't change their voting places and all of that. So there's no, I don't see how we can stop it. But I see electoral violence is coming up in many, many ways. You know, District 10, bombing, when people go into your office, break down your office and take everything and then arrest your workers. You want to retaliate. Somehow it's going to happen. This is where, you know, one time I said the Minister of Defense misspoke when he said he was drawing a line that he would go after anybody who break. He can't do it because his boss appointed him. If CDC does something, the Minister of Defense cannot do nothing about it. You get fired. This is where it was dangerous. When he first said it, people say, "Oh yeah, it's good because he put in people in check." No, Defense Ministry has nothing to do with this. And now, what happened in District 10? We also what happened with Yeke Koluba. This story is coming up. Bombing between Setuma and Tyler. Who else? Where else? So who's going to stop that? I think those things are more dangerous than the boat trucking. I think the trucking is normal. It's going to happen. People, you know, in Washington, I know friends who fly from Washington to go to vote in Ohio and come back to work. They don't, you know, they don't change their voting place because they want to be part of the voting process in the locality. So we can't stop that in a democracy. So the problem is, my driver one time, somebody took him to Sano and left him in the bush. He was there for a month. The guy didn't win. They never sent them for him. There are 40 people. He tracked 40 people to go into the village, and he got like 62 votes. And my driver was stranded. We had to send him money to come back home. So anyway, I think that's you know, I think trucking is okay.
How do we ensure now that they vote in just one place, or you vote only once? Because you can vote in Bannersville and then get in the truck and go to Bombay to vote.
Well, that's where the national database is very important. You know, if we had done this voter registration correctly, we'll have a national database that if you go to register, they put your finger on the machine, they say, no, you already registered in NIMBA. They will know automatically. And these are simple things on a computer. You could do a networking. You link computers, you process people. Once they're processed, you go into a national database, and then you know. That's how we get social security in this country. Nobody can steal your fingerprint. So if you don't do that, yes, you can stop it. You can know who's voting in NIMBA, and then the next morning they vote in Banga, and then the next day, by the afternoon, they vote in Painesville. How you know? Because they're all on paper.
Right. Dennis, can I just add a point?
Right. And before you add that point, let me announce that if you want to join the conversation, the number on the screen, 605-313-6004, 791-403 #. Call the number and chime in. Go ahead, sir.
So like I was saying, that it is that inducement part of it that becomes an issue, because then politicians start to fight who's stopping the other one from going to vote. You know, I think it was a few days ago I posted on my page. It's almost like a market. You know, when elections is coming, then you have some funds being traded. You have these young people who are very poor. They will take that $10 to go to be able to register. And I think one of the things I heard these few days was that people were even calling on the NTA not to get involved with it, because people are renting the buses and transporting people from one point to the other. And what I heard the NTA say was that they are not going to refuse money. If anybody comes to rent the bus, they are going to give it to them. So it's almost like a market where you have people demanding and you have people supplying, and they set a price and they go into the deal and do it. But I think, like Doug said, the overall is we really need to pay attention to is the issue of violence, because in the previous election, it wasn't easy in Cape Mount in Bomi County. If it starts happening even at the registration time, then the election, if it is not put under control, we could have some problems there.
Yes, Dennis, just to add a little bit.
Yeah, conclude on that. Especially, what can we do to minimize it, or so that
the question of electoral violence is actually an important issue to even highlight, because increasingly, if you take at least when we say democracy was restored, if you look at 1997 election, there was okay, the country was still scared. Taylor and men were roaming all over the place. Then you have international forces. So at least I was involved. I was election magistrate in that election. So it was kind of minimized. Okay. Then if you look at 2005 election, That was the election. The next election held since 1997. There was violence because it was the first post-war election, so to speak. There was a little bit of violence, with the CDC and the ruling party at the time, or United Party, LM supporters. Then if you look at 2011, there was violence where someone even lost life, okay? So increasingly, we are getting to that point. And in 2020 election, there was violence. Just the midterm election, there was violence across the country. There was violence even at just election primaries. Why is it so? Because government is a place to create wealth for themselves, not to serve. So increasingly, people see that, the shortest path to wealth is to serve in the legislature or become minister. So they do any and everything at any cost to get power. So increasingly, until we get back to holding people accountable, go back to governance, co-governance issue and rule of law, where people will say, you know what, I know myself and I know my desire to steal, to take things that don't belong to me. I don't think I belong in public service. Because if I go there, I might be caught. So until we get to that point, our election will continue, violence in the election will continue to increase because of the increasing desire for people to get wealthy.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the phone lines for callers. We already have 2 callers here. Let me take the first one, and that's Elvis Morris. Elvis, go ahead. You're live.
Thank you, Mr. Jai, and hello to your panelists. Firstly, before I even get to my comments, I just want to say good job tonight to Mr. Kanye. I think his analysis was good, especially looking, deeper than just the news about the 50 billion. You're looking at the opportunities that we have in Liberia, but our forests and how we can benefit from there as a country. And I think that was a deep analysis. But then before I even get on, let me call out Mr. Gonglo and Dr. Du for their hypocrisy when it comes to the tribal basis of which people vote. Because on this platform, we talked about how since we are from the Southeast, that white people voted for him because he's from the Southeast. The Crew people voted for him because he's a crewman. But in the same token, they're saying that our tribal leaning plays no part in our political system, or it doesn't play a significant part. But yet and still, they will say because we are from the Southeast, that's why the Southeast supports him. So I think they got to check themselves on that part of it. And then lastly, with the whole president, coming to the CIA, there's something called a sensitive, compartmented security facility, a SCIF, where we may not have a SCIF in Liberia where they can have a very high, highly sensitive meeting without any information getting leaked out. And perhaps that's why those other guys weren't allowed in the room, because perhaps they don't have the security clearance to have such high sensitive information disseminated to them. There's no cell phones. There can't be any third party who can't be trusted. So perhaps that's why the president was allowing it. This is just my speculation. But I know that in Congress they do something like that where highly sensitive information, they have to take it to a specific room where it's very secure, and people who try to even eavesdrop or bug, a wiretap can't get into it. So it's just my speculation, but that's my 2 cents. Thank you for taking my call.
And Evans, all they could have done was, yes, the president went and met with people in the CIA. That's all. We don't need details, right?
And plus, I never said Weah was crew, ever. I never talked about his ethnicity. So don't put that thing in my mouth. I never said Weah was crew and the people voted for himself. I never said it. And I would never say something that stupid.
Let me bring in the
okay. Thank you.
The next caller here. That's Christopher Roti Tubasi. Mr. Tubasi, go ahead. You're live.
Thank you, Mr. Ja. Mr. Ja, if we all agree that we should hold our lawmakers accountable, then let's do that. Because they are the first branch of government and they are the lawmakers. The other day I spoke about when last they ever created new laws. In America, they can create new laws, they can amend and all of that, and they can put it up for us to see it. And somebody said that, there are new laws, but let them show me the laws, the new laws that these guys have been creating.
The pension law is one.
Yeah, let the new laws benefit. Let it be in this time. that we are living in. Let them enact laws that will protect us now.
No.
Let people carry backpack on their bike and get a whole bunch of rocks in it and throw in it at people. Let's create laws that will be meaningful. Okay, they're talking about trucking people. The trucking people is a problem. Then lawmakers have to solve the problem. But if they are benefiting, then they want us to talk about it. And I think I don't see how it's going to work because they are benefiting from it. But they at the same time they're supposed to create law or give us or hours or track or maybe amend these laws. So but then it just but anyway we'll continue to talk. You know, we can't stop talking. Maybe it will help. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the $50 billion. I don't know where people get in the number from because President Weah not had press conference to mention $50 billion, and Samuel Toya have not seen in Sotoya to talk about $50 billion and all of that. You know, and lastly, I want to touch on this Stanton Witherspoon. Why now? What is his motivation? Why he didn't come up ever since to tell the Liberian people all these things? The man saying that
we'll address that tomorrow, Friday night. Come to our Friday night debate.
All right, thank you. Thank you to our panelists and everybody in studio. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kana, Mr. Gonglo, anything for our callers you want to respond?
Oh, no, yeah. So, is that Elvis Morris?
Yeah, the first caller.
Yeah, so the point he made, yes, I did say something about we are getting overwhelming Southeastern vote. Not necessarily he's imputing it. Yeah, the fact is it's a crew, man. Okay, but I said Southeastern vote, and it is just a fact. In 2005, the CDC under Weah won overwhelmingly in the Southeast. In 2011, Weah and Winston Thomas combined.
So you're saying they voted on ethnic line, right? That's what Evans is saying. That how can you say they are voting for Weah on ethnic line, and now you're saying people are not voting on ethnic line because if that was the case, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf would have not won.
So Dennis, let's get it. I think I was very clear. I said the question of the ethnic line voting, it takes the person that is on the ticket and the message and the network they build. That is
so there's no ethnic line voting in essence.
So what we are as a footballer icon, it was very popular in 2005. In fact, I remember in one room, Ellen Johnson said he was so scared and she was looking for a young person to put on the ticket. Okay, I remember some of the names that came out in that room, along with I was sitting there with the late Amberlite Johnson. They were like, "You guys bring us some names. What are some of?" Weah is giving us dust in Monrovia. The young people are arriving. So it was Weah on the ballot, his character. So it's important to point that out, okay? So the fact is, I'm not ruling out 100%, nor even 90% that people don't vote in Liberia on whether the person belongs to that ethnic. I'm saying that fact that people use sometimes say, oh, this person, you should take a running mate from this tribe because this tribe is majority tribe. It has not been proven. It takes the character of the person on the ticket, not just the tribe. It takes a message of the person, not just the tribe. Because Bronsky and Franklin Siako, they both came from the two most popular ethnic groups.
So it got to be one, Mr. Gonglo. You are saying they don't vote on tribe, but when it comes to Weah, they vote on tribe. Is that what you are saying? So, or you can say that Weah vote is not based on tribe because the young man was popular, right? So give me one. You can say both.
So Dennis, you can't be. It's not one position fits all because you know what? He didn't win in other counties too, but he won decisively in his region. So he has his base. The Southeast is his base. It's just a fact. I mean, in most political process, you have your base, and that's why sometimes you are told hold your base. then you fight for voting in other areas. The Southeast is Weah based. It's just a fact. In
But
3 elections,
let me, Gongolo, I think you make it too complex.
Right.
I think people follow him after he became president. That's when we started everybody started to identify him. He was senator for most of the country.
Yeah.
So, you don't let a man get into, but it was simple. He became president. They said, yeah, he's from the Southeast. How many people in Liberia knew that he was from Grand Cru before he became president?
Myself, I just knew when you were from Grand Cru.
Yeah,
he
became president.
When I saw in our crew dance with Representative
Funati
Yeah.
And that's why I will agree with Evis that it's hypocrisy, right? Because you are telling me that when they vote, they are not voting on tribal lines only when it comes to Weah. Because what I thought and what I argued before is these people are not voting for Weah because he's cruel. Even if they are voting for him, from different, because many of the people, just as you said, did not vote because he was from Grand Cru, right? So why is it that when it comes to Weah, it's tribal line, and then when it comes to Bromsky, it's non-tribal line? That's where I don't get, Mr. Gonglo.
Dennis, I think when it comes to human issue, it's not a mathematical formulation to say 2 + 2 is equal to 4, right? It's not that simple.
So what worked for Weah did not work for Bromsky.
The reverse question I'll ask you is, what explains that Weah will get in 3 successive elections, he will get almost like in Grand, I think 90-some% vote.
And he's not crowned.
And okay, but
he was Doe friend, Samuel Doe.
Yeah. So
Right.
why accounts for that he's popular with young people, maybe, or voters in that region, and not voters in Nimba, not voters in Bon County or in Kema. How can we explain that?
Yeah, how do we explain that Ellen Johnson won Maryland County and not Weah?
But he makes the point that I think we should always look at the fact that the alignment, like Samuel Doe became president in 1980, everybody from Grand Jere to Riverside became crown or some kind of crown.
No,
it's simple. Political, ethnic identity. People create, the power came to the man and they follow him. Weah became president, and we all know that he was from Grand Cru, and that he was born, etc., and then people follow him.
In fact, to add to that, or like what the producer, let's be realistic. Look how we are pattern of appointment in government. I don't have all of the statistics, but just on the superficial face of it, the appointment that Weah has power to make, I would say more than 80% has come from the Southeast. I mean, we can debate this, and we can even take a show to list all of the ministries and then put all the names that he has appointed. 80%. Look at the Supreme Court bench.
No, but we have never used the region as an ethnic group. But now, so when you say come from the Southeast, that's different from
I never said crew. I always said Southeast.
All right. Let's go to our next, which is your Tabata of the week, so that we can close on time. What is your Tabata of the week? Already, our viewers start writing their Tabata of the week. So think about your Tabata of the week. We'll take a short break. When we come back, you tell me your Tabata of the week. Welcome back to Tough Talking Thursday. At this time, we're going to go around the room for your Tabata of the week. Let me start with our viewers here. Rukase, my Tabata of the week is the GOL $5 billion and Stanton Spoon revelation about 50,000 K. Elvis Morris, my Tabata is an indictee, Stanton Witherspoon, still trying to be the voice of reason while being indicted, I think he meant. He has no moral authority to chastise the government. Mr. Kane, what's your Tabata of the week? And we always want to repeat that Tabata in Gribble or Crew is foolishness, complete nonsense. What's the nonsense that you want to talk about?
So the people actually stole my Tabata because Mr. Witherspoon came and said something about the 50,000. And I think I saw a picture today, like the Minister of Finance was in the Spoon studio responding. And he said somebody who sells nursing degrees don't have moral ground to say anything about me. So, and I think the whole Facebook has been taken by that. So I think it's really interesting what is going on there. But the next thing I wanted to talk about, I have seen an article today where the Minister of Education, I think, has said that Liberia's education system is in crisis, and I think the system needs $1 billion to be able to fix it. And it comes out at a point when this $50 billion thing was in the news. So I'm confused. I don't know if the Minister of Education is asking for their share of the $50 billion. So it was a little funny to me, even though education is very important to me. But I don't know what analysis went into informing that we need $1 billion to fix the education system.
I think someone responded and said, oh, we got 50 billion already, so take 1 billion from there.
Okay, that's interesting.
Dr. Duke, what's your Tabata of the week?
My Tabata is he stole it. That was the $1 billion from the Minister of Education. He never spoke. I never heard him say anything about education policy in the last 5 years, ever. All I know, he has a school system of his own that he's running night and day. And now the president comes with 50 billion. He won $1 billion out of it. It's like child play, right? I never said. Have you ever heard that man talk about education?
No.
Anyone? Interview, conference, anywhere? No.
We've been trying to invite him, but it's not been possible. But we still try.
Of course, no. He got to run his school.
Flomo Livingston said, "My Tabata is the president can't brief the country of Liberia." Mr. Gonglo, what's your Tabata?
Well, my Tabata, I don't know whether it will qualify as Tabata, or I should say. There has been much talk about opposition unity. But what doesn't make sense to me is the fact that the ANC filed a case at the Supreme Court. And it's just the ANC. The rest of the opposition have not spoken about that. They are not united on that. And the other issue is the census. I think 6 or 7 political parties came together. The ANC also did not sign that. And they too spoke, issue a press statement and what have you. There has been no further action on that. Registration is taking place. The biometric issue, the opposition had a position on that. Registration is taking place. And it's gradually becoming normalized. So where is this opposition unity? You know, I think the opposition might be fragmented and it might play to the wings of the ruling establishment. And for me, the talk on unity is increasingly not making sense to me. It's beginning to look like it's utter nonsense to me.
You're saying unity is a bad thing?
It's a good thing, but how are they approaching it? Cummings Gala, he goes solely to the Supreme Court. When the other group signing on the census, Cummings is not there, or ANC is not there.
Yeah, thank you. JG Togba said, my Tabata is NDC double registration process and failure to feed staff working extra hours. Sam Wallow, the Tabata of the week is there's still not a VP running mate from the major opposition party, and it's now 6 months to presidential election. My Tabata is the Liberian football, right? Lone Star. We always want to reap where we didn't sow. You can be in a country where you don't even hear about any of the national team. It's all what? How they call them now? Chelsea and all these things. So they all support is international. No preparation, but time for game you expect to win. It can't happen. You got to you got to put it in before you get it out. So it's complete tabata to really expect much from Lone Star. Well, that's all we have tonight. At this time, we're going to go around the room for your closing comments. Let me start with Mr. Kane.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It was a good show, good opportunity to come back to discuss these issues. Like I keep saying, I think with the internet and everything, you can stay out and still contribute to discussions back home. And I would really like that we get to a point, like I always say, where we discuss the real policy issues. And this is where all of these vice presidential pick, I think they need to pick their running mates so that we really get to know what is the substance that all of these political parties have to really offer. Because like I said, there's a lot of technical work that we need to do in that country. On the issue of the ambassador, like I said from the beginning, I think his tenure just ended and he's going to move on. He's a career foreign service officer in the State Department. Whether he's appointed to a post now or not, eventually he will get he will be moved on. On the $50 billion thing, we already spoke about it. I think there was a mix there, and I don't think the finance ministry should have allowed that to happen. Or even if the media had made a mistake, I think the finance ministry needs to come out. The government needs to come out to be able to clarify this. The other point I would say to this is that at this point in time, I think what we need to be doing as a country is to prepare for these things. Because in the end, it's going to be other companies. It's not the US now. Before it used to be the US and Europe, all of these consultancy firms, but this is in the UAE. So people have built their capacity in other regions and they are ahead of us. We have the forest, but they are the ones signing contract with us. They will determine who we do business with and they get their commission. I think it's the point in time when Liberia needs to be educating people and sending people out to go and do green finance. There's a lot of other areas that are coming on, climate finance and all of that. We need to have our own capacity back home. That's the only way we benefit from our forest sector. On the issue of the VP pick, like I said, I mean, it's the choice of the former vice president, and I would say that the responsibility is on him to do that pick. And on the issue of the voter tracking, I think it's going to be an issue. We can only use civic education. This is why there has been some discussion in Liberia that we should have an ongoing civic education program outside what the Election Commission does, because what the Election Commission does is civic and voter education. They are only educating you to vote. But what are your rights and responsibilities as a citizen is not what mostly the Election Commission does. So overall, a good show. Thanks to the callers who call. Thanks to them for listening. And thanks to all of my colleagues on set tonight. I look forward to coming back again.
And talking about civic education, if you want civic education, get this civic book that is on Amazon, The Foundational Words of Our Nation, the Republic of Liberia. So check Amazon and you're going to get a copy. It's very, very cheap so that you know civics. Also, you want to watch the Literary Hour, which comes on every Friday at 6 p.m. with Professor K. Moses Nambwe and the scholar Jackie Sayer. Gadflies of Conscience in the Liberian Society will be the topic this Friday. You don't want to miss it. Dr. Duke, what's your closing comment?
Well, I'll close saying that we had a good show, good discussions, and I think the issues are out there. We can't draw a conclusion. Contrary to what the ambassador said, we don't try to undermine anybody at home, but we comment on issues as it happen. I think there's a problem with the electoral process. The whole process is in a very difficult situation. I think we need to look at it from the registration process to civic education to dealing with electoral violence in all forms, because it's not one. The LU campus violence. When Akaris Gray went to LU, he accused the students of being manipulated by a political party. So that means it was a political issue. So it was not just to say, okay, let me go talk to the students and make peace. So it was part of the political issue, the political violence. So these things have to be taken into consideration. And now we have, as I said, we have Maurice Setuma and Alex Tyler in Bomi accusing each other of stealing votes, of buying cards, and it's going to be in the papers tomorrow. So if we're not careful, we're going to lose control of the process. And we may be facing a very chaotic electoral process, and it will not work. For the vice president, I trust anybody who say they want to be president, I trust you to make your good choices. If you make a bad choice, I'll say you're not ready. So that's my point. For the $50 billion, if we have 50 billion trees in the forest, let's count them and see how we can protect them. But my friend Samuel Jackson used to say, he always said about this Eleno thing. Eleno told something. They came, bought a thing, they did in Liberia, and 24 hours later on, they sold it to somebody for hundreds of millions of dollars. And we're sitting there with nothing. And the same thing would be done with this carbon issue. I know one of the first corruption issue that came up in the Serif government was about carbon issue. I don't know if you remember.
Carbon trading.
Yeah. It was carbon issue. People manipulate these things. Yeah. So we shouldn't forget this. It's not just innocent. 50 billion may be a number they throw out. People playing with the numbers, but hey, let's peel the onion, as my grandmother said. But I thank you, Dennis, for inviting me again. I thank my colleagues, Klebu, Gonglo, and Thomas. Been very fruitful discussion. Thank you, and I look forward to the next session.
Thank you for coming. Mr. Gonglo.
Well, Dennis, it was a fun discussion, as always. Always happy to share the panel with our erudite, Dr. Du, and this my young brother Thomas Cannon. But on the face of it, I think why moving forward, FOL, we should invest more time on those moving issues in 2023, because our viewer actually need to hear where we different perspectives on the issue. Not necessarily what we say is the truth, but we bring different perspectives and they too interact with us. So on the question of Weah trip, it's still not clear. It's still shrouded in secrecy. We expect the government to come out maybe next week, maybe the Easter week might help them to rethink how they deal with their shepherds, maybe, or the sheep, I should say. So let's hope the government will come and say something clearly as to what the president trip in Washington, D.C. was about. What was it, just an ordinary friendship visit like Dr. Du alluded to? What the whole issue about this carbon trading of in the forest sector, which is a good thing, by the way. Many people may not recall this. Norway, I think under President Salif, Norway came with a similar program and said, look, Liberia do not call laws and do not give your forest to loggers. Keep the trees. We will put this amount of money to replace a lost revenue from cutting the logs, right? And I think that program, I don't know how far the government of Liberia managed it, but I believe it should still be going on, So if this is true, that would just be in addition to that, okay? So, and it's a business. Other countries, it's a business. People go take good chunk of forest somewhere, pay for it, maybe solve it, get a deal for it, on the market for it, and say, look, I got forest here, and, it's a market. It's a trading. You trade. If you get buyers, they buy. So I think it's something that, Liberian professionals or investors may want to focus on. It presents another new form of investment or business to make money. But the government should manage the information, so that the public will trust what comes out of the government. Because we're taking almost a week to look at this issue from different perspectives. And some of it outright lies. We don't even know what is the truth until the government speaks to that and say, this is what the agreement. Maybe if President Weah or the Executive Marshal Press Bureau cannot speak to that, since it's reported that the FDA managing director was there, he should speak to that because that is the sector he has. He should speak to that and say, look, I was there. This is what is going to happen. He should say the truth. Are there opportunities for private citizens to get into such venture, or is it just going to be government initiative? So we want to know all of that stuff, okay? Then for 2023, on the VP pick for Honorable Boakai, I trust his judgment. He's an elderly, wise man. He has been in this business, some say 25 years, some say 42 years. So I trust whatever decision you make because he has said it publicly in an interview in 2017 that choosing your running mate, he said, this is one thing that no one can choose for you. It's like your cook, it's like your wife, it's like your security, it's like your driver. Only you can make that decision. He was very public about that. We can discuss, we can analyze all these people. Maybe even the names that come forward. Ambassador Boakai may not even looking at those names. Maybe he's looking at somebody who is sitting out probably in Paris, you know. So, but it's been a good discussion, and I hope by next week maybe we might work on and say, oh, the VP is Ambassador Boakai is the first opposition leader is announcing tomorrow morning. It might be a shock. Then right after that, maybe Councillor Gongo will follow or communes will follow. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or you might work and say Ambassador Boakai is announcing Alexander Cummings. It's possible.
Thank you. And people always say elderly, wise man. Is he wise because he's old, or is old because he's wise?
Well, it is a tradition that the older you get,
the wiser.
You get, because you see a lot in life.
Okay,
right?
You don't have to answer that. Let's think about it.
He learned. We hope he learned from 2017.
On that note, I would say thank you very much. Thank you.
From 2017 with me, run away from legislative partners because their records are there for grab. They've never been audited, so anybody can throw anything at them. You can't defend it.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time tonight. Keep following Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. This is the only place where real issues are discussed. There's no time for tabata. I want to appreciate also our viewers always following us. In case you miss it, follow us on YouTube, on Twitter, Facebook, and all major social media platforms. On this note, we end with our song that says, we are all Liberians. Have a good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia all we want. Liberia, Liberia all we want. Liberia,